with today's options in resale, like you can find something that is going to be fashionable and stylish and reflect whatever it is that is important to you and your brand.
Welcome back to Duo On Air. I'm Abby.
And I'm Courtney.
And we're the ex-agency turned entrepreneurial team that puts the Duo in Duo Collective. Our boutique organic marketing agency specializes in SEO, social media strategy, and branding.
We're an everyday pair of business besties / marketing experts obsessed with helping our community learn more about what it takes to run a business.
Which is why on Duo On Air, we're not holding anything back. We're giving you all the info we know about how to grow your business organically so you can be the confident CEO you were made to be.
And how to navigate life as a small business owner.
Whether it's on your own or with your best friend by your side, so grab your coffee
or your mimosa, we don't judge,
and settle in for a quick value-packed episode of Marketing Tips. Welcome back to the Duo On Air podcast. This is episode number 95, and we love when we get to bring new topics to the pod. Today, we're talking all about fashion. Now, if you're thinking, well, Abby, I typically roll up to my laptop in my slippers, leggings, and a comfy sweatshirt. How on earth will this episode apply to me? Don't worry, that's me too, and it will, I promise. In this episode, we talk about not just fashion, but what circular fashion is and the power of buying quality used pieces. We also touch on the importance of living your brand values, especially when it comes to things like sustainability and zero waste, something we never even thought of as brand experts. This episode is so unique and so good, we just can't wait for you to listen to it. So get ready to download some new shopping apps and discover a new way to find your next brand photo shoot outfit. Let's get into it. Hello, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us on the Duo On Air podcast.
Hello, hello, hello. It's good to be here.
We are so excited. Okay, so how about before we dive into everything else, let's just introduce you to everyone. Why don't you tell everyone who you are and what your business is?
Yeah, so my name is Emily Schwartz, and I am the founder of The Resale Stylist, and I help consumers really navigate the secondhand and resale marketplace today.
That's awesome. And with this episode is something that we've never actually talked about before, like incorporating style, fashion, all of that stuff into business and the way you work and your everyday. So we're super excited about this. We've actually worked from an SEO perspective with like a few stylists, but we've never brought it into like the branding business world. So this is going to be really fun.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So how about you tell us how did you get into like this resale world or the fashion world in general?
Yeah. So I, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, I've loved fashion since I was a little girl. And that is not me. I did not grow up obsessed with fashion. I did not grow up thinking that I would ever be making money in the fashion space. I really didn't fall into fashion until I graduated college and I was in the working world. And my first job, I thought I was going to be a journalist for the rest of my life. I was working as a producer at NPR, straight out of school. I had like the worst hours in the world, right? You're low in the system. I think I was working from like 4 a.m. until like noon or something like that. It was brutal. And, it was my first job. I had never worked at an office before. And, I went to the mall and I got my little like Ann Taylor pants and like my little blouse. And I showed up at the office. And even though it was really early in the morning, right? Like that newsroom was bustling at that hour of the day. And I think I was really unprepared for, just kind of showing up to the office in what I thought was really traditional workwear and looking around and kind of seeing that like everyone else who was, in my age and kind of in my same kind of job family was more or less like wearing the exact same thing. And maybe it was in a different color, maybe like a pant length was slightly different, but we were all kind of in variations on the same theme. And, here I was like this hungry young producer who was really actually like trying to stand out and grow and be ambitious. And I would show up every day kind of feeling like, I just looked the same as everybody else. I didn't feel special. I didn't feel like, anyone was going to notice me in any sort of positive way. I was really unprepared for how wearing what everyone else was wearing was going to make me feel like this cog in the system. So, I was young, I was green. I think I was making like $30,000 a year, living and working in DC. And, I didn't have a ton of money to go out and buy crazy, unique, expensive pieces that were going to make me, help me feel more confident and stand out in the office. So I started going to, secondhand stores in DC because I discovered through resale, I could find higher quality pieces that were more unique and that felt more true to, not only who I was at the time, but who I wanted to be. There were way less money than, going to the mall and getting that, silky Ann Taylor blouse or something, right? So that was really my foray into style. And it really was born out of, necessity sounds like too strong of a word, but like it was born out of me just feeling uncomfortable showing up in the office, feeling and looking like everybody else and wanting to stand out. And when I say stand out, I don't mean like dressing in avant-garde, costumey stuff, just something that didn't feel like literally what everyone else also went to the mall and picked up and was wearing, right? So that was really my start. And even as my career grew and as my salary grew, as my job families moved around, right? I moved out of journalism. I was working in technology for a long time. I worked in software development. We could talk about that if we want, but I did a total career pivot. Even as my career was growing and my salary was growing, I found that shopping secondhand and shopping resale was really where I was really where I was getting a lot of my ambition and confidence in the workplace. And what started happening is that my colleagues and friends and family started taking note, right? It was, Emily, where'd you get that great blazer? Emily, where'd you get those great shoes, right? And by the time that I was working in product management at Capital One, I was starting to be more well-known for these unique pieces than, I don't love saying like I was more well-known for that than my actual job, but the reality is people were coming to me being like, hey, I have this big presentation next week. I'm looking for a blazer that's gonna, fit well, make me feel great. Can you help me find something? And that's where I started spending my time. Mm-hmm. And, this started just happening enough that I got enough signal that I was like, you know what, maybe there's a way that I can try to take my expertise in this space and my love and interest in this space and help others. And even though, again, for my own situation, it was kind of born out of wanting to feel more confident in my own skin. There was definitely an economic driver, right? As the years went on, there's also this like massive sustainability play that comes, into the conversation and, learning more about where our clothes come from and, just all the waste that goes into that. So anyway, it's been a long road, but about a year ago, maybe a little more than that, I decided to just try to leave the 9-to-5 behind to really try to embrace kind of helping others navigate this resale world and helping, women look and feel really great and showing up to work every day and, helping them accomplish their ambitions. And here we are.
Awesome. Yeah.
That is amazing.
How has that pivot been for you? Like, so you went from the like world of an office, right? Being surrounded by people standing out to now which maybe you work with a lot of people who are still in office too. But like, how did your mindset shift to being like on your own and like being home? Like, did that really affect how you approach this?
So it's kind of interesting. I am someone who cannot get work done if I'm in my sweatpants all day, right? I know that there are lots of people who work from home in leggings and a sweatshirt, and there are actually studies that show that like when we wear what is authentic to ourselves, we do perform better, right? It's like we're not focused on other stuff. We're not focused on uncomfortable, shoes or whatever it is. Like we're just, we feel like ourselves. We do good work. For me, I'm someone that even working from home by myself, I personally need to dress in something that is going to help me feel confident. And for me, that's not sweatpants and leggings. For some people it is, and that's totally fine. You asked about, what it's been like kind of transitioning also from working, in a team, in an office, to working by myself. And absolutely, it's been a massive, massive change, right? I went from, having people to delegate to, having collaborators, having, endless resources, to really having to work on time management on my own, having to identify, do prioritization on my own. And it was a massive change. And I would be lying if I said it was easy, right? Like, I did not leave my 9 to 5 and start working on my own and just like, oh, I was off to the races and doing great, right? It took me probably at least 6 months, maybe even maybe more than that, to even feel like I was starting to get a rhythm down. And, there's a lot that I've learned through this process, but I would be lying if I said, yeah, I just like left my 9 to 5 and jumped into entrepreneurship and like I was rolling, because that was not the case, right? Figuring out how to structure my days, figuring out where to focus my time, where to focus my energy was a real challenge for me.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a challenge for every entrepreneur. I still feel we're like 4.5 years in, and there's still days where I'm like, wait, what? Like, what am I supposed to do today? How am I supposed to structure my day?
Yeah. Someone, I don't know how the two of you do it, but someone gave me advice around like dedicating a certain day to certain tasks, right? So, Monday is your, like, hypothetically speaking, right? Like your admin day. Tuesday's your social media day. Wednesday's, your meeting day, that kind of thing. And that kind of structure has been helpful for me. But, I'm still working through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah. Court and I talk all the time about, and also it's kind of crazy, like through the 4 years of our business too, like nothing stays the same. Like there is no consistency to the routine. And usually it's like the outside elements that are like creating that chaos. But like for me, I feel like every season my kids are doing something different, so I have to do something different. And then it's so easy to like go out there and like look at other people's schedules and like be like, oh, I should do that, or like I should have a morning routine, or I should have like this kind of structure to my day, or I should have a CEO day. And it's like really about you just need to figure out like your own life and what works for you and where you feel good and confident, and like that is what's going to make the difference, because there's so many like perfect routines out there that can make you go crazy or make you feel like crap because you don't have one. And it's like, there's a season for everything. Like, sometimes you have great routines and sometimes you don't, and you just figure it out and you figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, my husband also left his 9 to 5 to start his own thing. And we did this around the same time, which like we're crazy people. So, we both went from having so much structure in our day to now the two of us, we'll be like walking around the house sometime being like, oh yeah, like, like, how are you, like, what do you have on your schedule today? Like, how are you thinking about doing stuff? And sometimes, for him, he's like, you know what, I'm most productive from 10 to midnight, right? So that's when I'm going to do my, power hour, where I tend to be like mornings is when I need to, add some structure to my day. And after that, I'm a little more comfortable being fluid so long as I get that morning structure in. But it's definitely been a change for sure.
Oh yeah. We're in that same boat too. Courtney's husband also owns his own business.
Amazing.
Mine quit in January as well and is pursuing something new, which we thought about bringing him on the podcast to talk about that later. So TBD on that.
You should.
But yeah, it's pure chaos. Like,
we're all in the same life right now. We're all like, are we crazy for all having our own businesses?
Yeah.
But it's fun.
It makes taxes really complicated. I will say that.
Oh my gosh.
I love
partnership. Multiple.
I realize it's a podcast, but I just really appreciated all of our eyes widening, like at the word taxes. We were like, oh.
I know. Thank goodness there's people out there to help with that. My gosh.
Exactly.
So you mentioned something when you had submitted just like the questionnaire to come on the podcast,
Sure.
and you talked about circular fashion. I would
Mm.
love for you to talk more about that because also fashion, the world of fashion, other than the research I've done in the SEO landscape, is like that's about it. Like I'm like just there. So I'd love to learn more about circular fashion and why it's kind of gaining momentum right now.
Yeah. So circular fashion, I live and breathe in the circular fashion space. So I think of circular fashion as really kind of that never ending journey of a garment, right? That starts at like the very beginning of its, production cycle. And like literally think of, a circle, right? Like all like its whole life cycle, how it's designed, how it's produced, the materials that are used to produce it, how it's distributed, how it's shipped, how it's worn, what happens after it's worn, is it donated, is it resold, is it upcycled, right? It's really that whole journey of a garment. So increasingly, circular fashion is getting a lot of attention in the fashion space and also in really like the environmental community because fashion is one of the largest new fashion is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions in the entire world, right? New fashion actually contributes more emissions than global shipping and flights combined every single year, okay? Which is insane. And it's everywhere, right? Like we pick up our phones, we're on Instagram and we're scrolling through, oh, look at this cute top from Amazon. Look at this, e-commerce brand that is, making this great sweater for fall. It is literally everywhere. Fashion is everywhere. It is so normal. We go to Target, right? It's everywhere. And circular fashion is really, really gaining momentum in this space because we're starting to realize that, oh, we can't just like keep endlessly producing garments that just end up getting thrown away in a landfill, right? And even, I know a lot of us are like, oh, well, when I'm done with something or it doesn't fit anymore or whatever, I donate it, right? And we can feel good about donating it. And the reality is that even when we donate pieces, oftentimes they end up in landfills also, right? So basically how, from an industry perspective, what are the choices that we can make from both the, supply side, the people producing, the companies producing these garments, and even, like the textiles that we're using, all the way through consumers, right? As shoppers, as people who need to wear clothes in society, right? What can we do a little differently to extend the life cycle of a garment? So that is circular fashion, right? It's how do we thoughtfully, responsibly design, source, produce, distribute, recycle the pieces that we are wearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the rise of like capsule closets and like all of the things too of having more quality, less quantity. Like I think that is definitely increasing right now. And it's coming from like, I think it comes from both like the sustainability aspect of it and also like feeling good about what you're buying, but it also comes a little bit from decision fatigue. Like people are so
Yeah.
tired of having to make
Yes.
these decisions of like,
Yes.
what should I wear? And it should always be different. Like I should always be dressing different. I can't wear this dress more than once because I took a picture at a wedding with it. Like we don't, like society in general is just like, you don't repeat clothes, right?
Right. Consume.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty crazy. There was actually a study that came out, it was like 2 weeks ago or something. So there's a circular fashion software company called Trove, and they basically help fashion brands roll out resale programs, essentially, right? And they were looking at how the impact of resale actually contributes or doesn't contribute to like the emissions of a given fashion brand, right? They did like this big study. And the study actually concluded that for like fast fashion brands who have resale programs, which actually are, as most of the big fast fashion brands today. So like, the bad word, Shein, H&M, Zara, like they all have their own resale programs actually. And the study essentially concluded that for those fast fashion brands, resale doesn't really make a big difference at all. It impacted the reduction of CO2 emissions by less than 1%. And for premium brands, it was actually very different, right? So premium brands that have their own resale programs, they're producing less overall. They might be using more quality materials. Resale has a meaningful impact on sustainability efforts for those premium brands. But for those fast fashion brands, their efforts are going to be much better spent on making changes to how they make clothes rather than just trying to resell them. And then, from personal experience, I think we can all kind of relate to like, oh, that thing from H&M is probably not going to last for like years and years and years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
for real. So where do you love to shop? Like for you or for your clients? I would love to know. Online, in person, all the things.
Yes. So it's funny. I often tell the people I work with, my clients, like resale does not have to be all or nothing. So sometimes people are like, oh, like I would shop secondhand more, but like I don't have the time, right? And I have to remind people like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like that would be completely unreasonable to completely overhaul all of your habits and routines to only shop at thrift stores or consignment stores or the Real or whatever. I shop primarily Poshmark, the Real, and I have a few local consignment stores here in Denver that I love, including Common Threads Denver and Rags Denver. And that's honestly where I get most of my stuff. Poshmark, the Real, and those local consignment stores. That is also where I source for my clients more often than not. There is a litany of resale marketplaces that have emerged over the past 5, 10, 15 years. Resale is actually growing, estimated between 7 and 11 times faster than primary retail right now. So that includes marketplaces like ThredUp, Depop. I don't know how much of your audience is Gen Z, but like Depop is massive with Gen Z. Luxury resale marketplaces like Fashion File or Rebag, for example. The old classics like eBay also are still out there, right? But for me personally, it's a lot of Poshmark, a lot of the Real, and my favorite local consignment stores here in Denver.
That's awesome. My husband is an avid Poshmarker, and also
I love it.
The amount of Poshmark boxes we get, it'll just come. He'll like put out bids for things, and he'll do like the same thing, like 3 bids, and then they'll all accept, and then he'll be like, "Oh, I got a lot of stuff coming," and I'm like, "You come on, dude."
That's amazing.
Funny.
You know what? So it's really interesting to hear you share that story because there's a lot of talk in this world right now about, again, we were talking about consume. And, it's like there's an environmental impact to like shipping all that stuff, however many miles from wherever, right? So there's a lot of conversation in this space right now about like, oh, is like resale encouraging like over consuming more than it would be otherwise? And I don't know about that, but
right. Well, and some of them like the Poshmark, I mean, and I haven't used many apps other than Poshmark. I've used ThredUp too. Like love the ThredUp like bags and feeling also like to your point, like feeling good about donating, but also then making sure that you're buying from, good places too. But Poshmark, I mean, it's kind of like a game too, like a gamified way to shop because you're competing for these items. I mean, it's eBay in a vamped up way, but
yeah, little friendlier to use for sure.
Yeah.
No, but the reason that I remind my clients to embrace resale isn't just, like, here's the reality. People are like, oh, I want to do something nice for the environment, but generally it is either like an economic driver or like you want a specific piece, you want to feel unique in that piece or something. That is the primary reason why people tend to go after resale. But I always remind my clients, you get a much better price to value ratio shopping resale than you do primary retail. And I'm sure it sounds like your husband has fully embraced that, right? Like, oh, I can get this thing that I really want for like, a fifth of what it might be selling for new or whatever.
Oh yeah, fully. He's always buying vintage Vikings gear. That's usually what it is like all vintage 90s Vikings So
Very Glenn.
I love it. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and I'm a massive Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Ooh.
And I can relate to that. I know.
Those are fighting words.
I'm in my green today too,
I see that.
But I definitely relate to the vintage sports gear for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Glenn got me addicted to Facebook Marketplace. I used to be that person that was always like, I have to buy brand new. Like that's the only way. Like, I know that it's new. I know that like where it's going to be living, where it's, being taken care of. But then I was like, I just recently had a baby. And when it comes to like baby clothes, I was like, this is insane. First of all, baby clothes are insanely expensive. They grow so fast. I was just like, there's no way I can keep up with this. So I'm constantly like Facebook Marketplace or Goodwill or like even just like Facebook groups where moms are giving away clothes. I'm like, I have to do this because otherwise I'm spending a fortune on my daughter who's growing by the minute.
Yeah, children's wear is actually the fastest growing resale category. It is projected to grow by 493% in the next decade.
Wow.
For all the reasons you just said, right? Yeah. Like kids outgrow stuff so quickly. It's like, why would you pay full price for anything?
Right. And why put them in anything like super glamorous and nice? Because it's going to get dirty. It's going to get spit on. It's there's just no point.
But you said something just now that perked up my ears a little bit, which was you were saying, you always used to be that person who, would just wanted to purchase things new. And I definitely think there's a lot of misconceptions about resale and secondhand. And I think that, one of those things that I hear sometimes from people I work with, so like there's like a little anxiety, like, is it going to be gross? Is it going to be stained? Is it going to smell? And the good news is like, the way that resale marketplaces are set up today, especially all the, online, the digital resale marketplace space, there are so many ways that you can help make, ensure that you're buying something you're going to be really happy with, right? So any consignment model, they're doing like a quality check for you, right? And they're going to detail anything that is wrong or flawed or whatever with a piece, and they're not going to sell it if it's not in good condition, right? So whether you're shopping in the Real or ThredUp or whatever, just pay attention. They're going to tell you the condition of the piece, and they're going to detail if like it has a loose button or something. And if there's anything really wrong about it, they're not going to sell it, right? Like that's not in their interest. The Wild West tends to be more the peer-to-peer marketplaces, Poshmark, Depop, eBay, that kind of thing. So I always encourage people to ask questions when they are purchasing a piece directly from a seller. I always, always, always ask, are there any stains, flaws, or odors? Even if something is marked as new with tags, I always, always, always ask the seller, hey, are there any stains, flaws, or odors? And that way they have a chance to let you know if there's anything, worth noting about the piece, and you have a very, very clear understanding of, actually it's missing a button, or, it has a pen mark on the back or something, right? That might not have been initially disclosed. So you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, I think that's great that you brought that up, because I think that's a big barrier for people when it comes to buying things that are used or resale. I think people do get those like scaries where they're like, oh, I don't know, like it's probably going to be shipped to me and smell really gross. And like, then it's my problem and I have to take care of it. And I might not ever wear it because I'm just like put off by it. So I think that's a really, really valid point.
Right. Yeah. And, you can always search by new with tags too, if you want to kind of limit your, limit the results of kind of what you're shopping for. Most resale marketplaces today have an option where you can search by new with tags. Fashion File, which is like a luxury marketplace, they actually have a really cool filter where they will tag an item as being giftable, right? So if it's in such pristine condition, maybe it's still in a box or it's still in, all of its original packaging, you can actually filter by something that's giftable. So I really love that tag from Fashion File.
That's awesome. Yeah. You said something that I think it was just super interesting and kind of eye-opening, because we talk a lot about your like living and breathing your brand, right? And like being your personal brand, infusing your personality into your business, like that being so important. And identifying your brand values of like, which a lot of people have these brand values of like zero waste, giving back,
Yeah.
sustainability, like
Yeah.
all of these go so deep that we don't think about the fact that we can live and breathe those in the brand clothes we buy for our photo shoot. Like those little
Yeah.
tiny things that we do help make our brand bigger than what it is. And I think
So
that
true.
is so cool to think about that from this aspect of like, what are you wearing every day? Are you actually living and breathing your brand? Because you probably can so much deeper than you thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. I think, I would be, it would be so disingenuous, for example, for me to show up and being like, I could help you navigate the resale world if I'm out there, just wearing, head to toe, brand new fast fashion, right? That would be completely disingenuous to the things that I care about and the things that I want to help, my clients, also achieve in their day-to-day lives. Right. So I think that's absolutely spot on. And, we were talking about misconceptions a little bit earlier. Every once in a while, some people bristle when they hear resale because they think it's, it's only vintage or it's only costume stuff, right? Or, they're going to look like they walked out of the 1970s or something. And that's just not the case, right? It is completely not only possible, but, likely that, let's say you have like a big, like a big appearance coming up, you're headlining a big event, you're at a conference, you're moderating a panel or something, right? With today's options and resale, like you can absolutely find something that is going to be fashionable and stylish and modern and reflect whatever it is that is important to you and your brand. And you mentioned, brands having values that align to like zero waste and sustainability. And increasingly that's, something that I think businesses are so much more attuned to than they used to be, right? They recognize that it's important to not just, their own business, but to how their audience perceives them and the things that their audience cares about. And absolutely what we wear and how we show up in the world, I think should be a reflection of our brand and our brand values.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this other positive thing about it too, is like, I know if I've bought something, resale and I wear it and somebody compliments me and they're like, oh my gosh, where'd you get that? Isn't it kind of fun to be like, oh, I got this at that vintage store, blah, blah, blah. And then that they can't go out and buy the same exact thing
Yes.
that you have. So
Yes.
It's just like this confidence booster. You're like, oh, I'll tell you where I got this.
Yes.
It's not like you're just like, oh, Target, where everybody else is going to get it,
Exactly.
So it's just that like confident boost. And it is that unique piece
Yes.
that no one else around you is going to own.
Exactly. You have it spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a reel going around about like, when you thrift something, you don't have to tell someone how much it costs. And it's like, sorry. Yes, I do. Because you're like proud. You're proud
because
of
you want
that.
to.
Yeah. You're proud of like the fact that you bought it.
This is a perfect example. This is from, what is this? This bright green blouse is from Eero, which is this like lovely French label, if you're not familiar with it. And I bought this new with tags on Poshmark for like 30 something bucks. It retails for like, I don't know, 200 something. And I was like, this is a great find.
It's crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy. There's also, I will say too, it's bizarre. And I'd love to know your take on this too, based on like the clients you work with or people you work with. But
yeah,
our generation, like we have that like ick factor for some reason of like buying new, used or whatever. I have been in thrift stores that are up priced so much, like something that should be probably $5 because it has holes in it. It is ripped. It is jagged. It is like all the things. They're selling it for like $100 because the Gen Z generation is like booming from my perspective of like some of these thrift stores. They're like, oh my goodness, this is like vintage because of this. Like, it doesn't matter that it has holes in it. Like, this is just like, you can sell it for so much money. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, this is a bizarre world to me, which I'm assuming you're experiencing that as well.
So it's funny. Sometimes when people hear, especially the name of my business, right? The resale stylist, Emily, she does the resale stuff, right? They kind of make some assumptions and they're like, oh, you must be really into thrifting, right? Or are you a professional reseller? And the answer is, I'm actually not a big thrifter and I'm actually not a professional reseller. And I can go into what both of those terms mean, because I think it's so easy for like vocab to, get a little confusing here. So thrift stores, and I'm going to come right back to what you said, Abby, about this like boom with Gen Z and thrift stores, thrifting, like the thrift halls. Thrift stores. Okay. Thrifting is different from consignment. Okay. So thrift stores are going to be your Goodwills, your Salvation Army, your, I live in the West, right? So like ARC is a big brand out here in the West. These are essentially, people donate their items, right? People bring the items to the Goodwill, they donate their items, Goodwill or whatever it is, marks them up a little bit, usually not that much, but they're going to mark them up a little bit and then they sell them, right? But they like the person who is donating those pieces is not receiving a cut of, whatever that piece sells for, as opposed to a consignment model, which is very, very different, right? A consignment model is going to be very judicious about what they accept. They're probably not going to accept most pieces that are brought to them. And then you, the seller who is bringing the piece to the consignment store or the online consignment marketplace, is going to get a cut of what that piece sells for. So with thrift stores, again, your Goodwills, your Salvation Army, that kind of thing, there's no discerning eye, right? That is like, oh, this doesn't meet I shouldn't say there's no discerning eye, but there's less of a discerning eye for what goes out on the floor, right? And you're going to find pieces that are generally much less expensively priced than what you're going to find at a consignment store. However, every once in a while, you're going to see something that is like, oh, here's this Coach bag from 1992, and it is, the whole interior is stained and Goodwill has it marked up for like $100 or something, and there's holes in it, and you're like, what am I going to do with this, right? It has been really interesting to see the rise of like thrift hauls, especially on TikTok. I know the Washington Post did an article about this a few weeks ago, and all of the content creators who are basically creating these like thrift haul boxes for people, and you say, oh, I'm a size medium and here's a few $100 and just send me all the size mediums from your thrift haul, right? And that's a business, right? And these content creators are really successful doing that, and consumers seem to be really happy getting a box of size medium stuff from a thrift store, right? That is not the business I am in. But it has been really fascinating to watch that phenomenon kind of explode. And listen, if that's your thing, great. Like, I'm glad people are doing that, but that's not the business I'm in, and that's not the audience that I serve.
Yeah, it's crazy. At least here in Minnesota, up north, like especially like we go up to Lutsen every year, and just like up by Lake Superior, there are a lot of private thrift stores that people have started and there's not a lot of options. Like when you go up north, like it's very limited. You don't have a big city, you don't have shopping malls, you don't have anything like that. But there are tons of thrift stores with really marked up items that it's kind of crazy, but also they're successful. So it's a whole different world up there.
Yeah. And listen, I get a lot of times, people like to feel things, right? I get that online shopping is tricky because not only can you not try things on, you cannot feel the fabric of something, right? So I always recommend to clients, pay attention to the fabric, right? Consignment platforms will list the fabric content. So you have a sense of, is this polyester or is this cotton, right? Like you'll get a good sense of that. And then on peer-to-peer platforms, again, Poshmark, Depop, that kind of thing. Always ask what the material is, right? So that you have a sense of what it is that you're getting, because I get that one of the appeals of shopping in person is, again, like actually feeling a piece, getting a sense for it, and then also trying it on, right? So the other thing I recommend is knowing your measurements when you're shopping online, because it's wild to me that like primary retail hasn't caught on to the fact that like including measurements in a piece can be helpful to help reduce, returns and waste and all that. But one of the most amazing things about resale is that online resale marketplaces almost always include measurements. So if you know your measurements, you just, look and see if you're interested in a piece, just check the measurements. And that can really, really help you make an informed decision about like, oh, this thing is probably going to fit because I know my measurements and, I can purchase this confidently.
Yeah. So a lot of our audience is like entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or people who are aspiring to do that. Do you have like, what kind of tips do you have for those people who might be working more so in a home and just like thinking like, oh, I don't even think about this. Like I just put on sweats in the morning and I don't even think about my style, but like understanding this and then how to get started and kind of finding that, like how should you get started in finding your own personal style as an entrepreneur who might work from home?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things. There have been studies over the years that have shown that what we wear, impacts our performance. One of my favorites comes out of a Yale study, and they basically like segmented participants into two groups. And they said, hey, group one, you're going to wear sweatpants. Hey, group two, you're going to wear, posh, smart, snappy suits. Okay. And they gave these groups the exact same exercise. They were supposed to like participate in these like mock real estate negotiations. Exact same exercise. Okay. No other variables other than what they were wearing. And the group that performed, that like did this exercise in like the snappy suits, ended up negotiating it's all an exercise. They ended up negotiating a theoretical profit that was 209% more than the group in the sweatpants. Okay. And they did the exact same exercise. And that's one of my favorite studies, but there are other studies over the years that have basically shown and demonstrated similar results, right? That when we get dressed up, it's almost like, it's like we put on a costume or an armor or something. We're like, oh, we're going to dress for this task in front of us right now. That positively impacts the outcome of that task, right? So for those who are thinking about starting their own business, or they have an idea and they want to get to work, I do generally recommend dressing up a little bit, right? These studies show that putting on, I don't use the word like fancier or like business attire, because I don't want to like put categories around it like that, but dressing in something that feels really good to you, where you feel smart, you feel successful, you feel like you're embodying that thing, that goal that you have in mind. Just dressing up in those clothes actually increases like our abstract thinking and those outcomes. So I definitely recommend just putting on something that is really going to, again, you can pretend it's armor or a costume if you need to. One of my absolute things that I kind of always recommend is wear a good pair of shoes. And I know even if we're working from home, you're like, why do I need to wear shoes at all? Like, I'm in my chair, I'm sitting across or whatever, I'm on my couch, right? Wearing a really good pair of shoes, I have found, has been, I don't know, you're like literally stepping in to who you want to be and what you want to achieve, right? If I'm putting on running shoes, like I'm going for a run, right? Or I'm going to feel strong in whatever it is that I'm doing. If I'm wearing a pair of heels, I'm going to feel like, okay, I'm like a badass boss behind this desk, making decisions and delegating and ruling the world, right? So I really recommend, if you don't want to overhaul everything, because like that's overwhelming, put on a really good pair of shoes. And I'll stand by that.
I love it. That is the one thing that I miss. I miss probably that the most from the agency days, which Court knows. Well, I'm only 5 feet tall. So like most days I would wear heels, not like high heels, but I would wear heels almost every single day. And that is one thing that I miss. And my husband even said something the other day, because I wore heels. I don't know what we were doing. We were going somewhere. And I was wearing heels, and he's like, do you ever wear heels? I like, I'm like, do you remember? Like, it wasn't that long ago. It's like 3 years ago. Do you remember that I wore heels every day to work? And he's like, I don't know. It feels like a lifetime ago. I'm like, I agree. But
listen, I get it. So I have feet issues, right? So I cannot walk around in heels much anymore, but sometimes I will put them on when I'm just sitting at my desk doing work. And I know that that sounds insane and crazy, but for me, it actually really helps put me in the right mindset. And
I have so many heels. By that. From the agency day, that was like the one thing I was like, I can wear heels every day. This is amazing. And now I haven't touched those heels probably in about like 4.5 years. So I'm going to go put on a pair after this.
And listen, it doesn't have to be heels, right? Again, like I also feel strong in my running shoes or in the shoes that I wear, when I'm strength training or something too. So, just find a shoe that gives you the foundation that you want. And you're like, you feel good in a good pair of shoes.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Next time you're recording a course, you have a guest podcast interview, you have a speaking opportunity that's online. Like, I think those are awesome tips too, just to make sure that you're like stepping into that confidence, just like you would if you were in person. So
Exactly.
I think
Absolutely.
that's great advice. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, closing thoughts. I don't know. Like I said, resale doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like I leaned into it because, again, I was able to find pieces that helped me feel good and feel like me at a price point that had a much better price to value ratio. And again, like you don't have to completely overhaul your routines to get a better deal, to do something better for the environment, to find a good piece, right? Even if just here's an example I use sometimes, right? Generally, for like just a new pair of jeans, when we're shopping for a new pair of jeans, it takes about 2,400 gallons of water to make a single new pair of jeans, right? So imagine if you just replace that one pair of jeans that you would usually buy brand new with a pair of jeans that you pick up from the Real or Poshmark or on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, right? You are having a positive impact in this world, right? And it doesn't require you overhauling all of your routines, right? So I would say start small, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
I love it. All right. Where can everyone go to find you and just hear more about what you offer?
Of course, you can always learn more about me and my business at theresalestylist.com. And I am the Resale Stylist across all social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily. It was so awesome to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it was so great to be here.
If you liked this episode, please be sure to share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes dropping every Monday. Plus, if you haven't already, please leave us a review and don't hesitate to share any new episode ideas. We love hearing from you and creating this content for you. See you next week.